Gordon Ramsay can help your writing, and I'm not even joking. This is a method I actually use with writers to break down plot structure, character arcs, wants, needs, tone, the whole lot. Quick warning, there will be a lot of angry British shouting.
Stop asking such ridiculous questions!
This is screenwriting, the Gordon Ramsay method. You may be thinking that if you want to learn screenwriting, then you should study the greats, and yes, there is nothing wrong in reading Oscar-winning scripts and seeing why they work and why they're so well received. However, that's only part of it. You need to understand the mechanics of a script, and a good screenwriter hides those mechanics so well that sometimes it's hard to learn and understand from those writers you admire. In a way that singing is all about technique, you can't just emulate the sound of your favourite singer overnight, writing is the same. I think too often writers dive into writing a piece inspired by their favourite films or TV shows without actually looking at the basics of storytelling. This is where Gordon Ramsay comes in. Specifically, Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmares. I honestly think Kitchen Nightmares may be a writer's wet dream when it comes to analysing the important elements of story. With over 100 episodes of the US version alone, and most of them being free to watch on YouTube, it's easily accessible and cheaper than any How to Write book. Plus, due to it being reality TV, it doesn't try to hide its formulaic approach. Every episode is basically the same. We meet the people who own the restaurant, Gordon enters, he tries the food and he thinks it's bad. He watches the dinner service, finds mouldy stuff in the fridge and rubs his bare hands over it like a fucking psycho. He creates a new menu and restaurant for the family, they do a reopening dinner service, it starts well but then it goes wrong. However, they push through, Gordon leaves and they've got a new established restaurant. That is basically every episode, and that is basically the structure of most stories. First, we establish the normal, and that's the family running their restaurant into the ground. Then, the inciting incident, and that's Gordon arriving. We know that the owners are about to go on a journey which will result in them having to change. Then, they struggle with this change. They're not used to someone coming in and being so honest with them. It's an unfamiliar situation. But then they begin to adapt, they start listening to Gordon. Next, they get what they want, a new menu and a new restaurant. But then they pay a price for it. They can't cope with the pressure of the new menu and the layout and all feels lost. However, in the conclusion, they push through, Gordon leaves, and we establish the owner's new normal. Which, to be honest, is usually they have a restaurant that doesn't have rat shit in the kitchen anymore. Honestly, this show may put you off eating out in America, that's the one downside of the method. And if this structure doesn't work for you, let's do a different one. Let's break it down into the traditional 3-act structure. The setup. This is the first 10-12 minutes of the episode. We meet the owners, establish their goals and flaws. Gordon arrives, once again this is always the inciting incident. He's also kind of the MacGuffin, he's the device that moves the plot along and motivates the characters. And then the first main plot point. Gordon tries the food and fucking hates it, upsetting the characters and the world as they knew it. Now Gordon is here, it feels like the owners are at the point of no return. And I know what you're thinking, that's just basically the first Toy Story. The setup. We meet Woody and all the other characters in the normal world as they know it. Woody is in charge, everyone knows their place, and everyone is happy. And then, the inciting incident. Andy's birthday party, where most of the toys now terrified they're going to be replaced. This leads us to our first main plot point, the introduction of Buzz Lightyear, who is immediately given the top spot of being placed on Andy's bed, knocking Woody to the floor. As Woody climbs out from under the bed and sees Buzz for the first time, he knows that his whole world has changed. He is at the point of no return. Okay, back to Ramsay. Confrontation basically sums up Kitchen Nightmares, to be honest. With no arguments, this would just be an hour of Gordon smelling rotten chicken. And I don't want to kink shame, but that's not my thing. Act 2 is sometimes known as the fun and games section, or the promise. Fun and games means this is where the characters start tackling all the obstacles, and the promise relates to the premise of the film or the show. So here we get the obstacles, the dinner service, the rotten fridge, and also the promise of the premise. Gordon trying to fix the restaurant, making a menu, all the beats of the actual format. And the structure goes like this. The protagonist, which is the owner, not Gordon because he's a MacGuffin, tries to establish power against the changes. However, he becomes more informed that things are going wrong, leading us to the midpoint, also known as the moment of truth. The owner realises that their restaurant is shit and they've messed up massively. With this new understanding, the protagonist has a better understanding of the world. Then we get a reminder at what's at stake, upping the tension. This is usually a sit-down moment with Gordon where the owners talk about their debt, or having to sell their house, or wanting to make their dead parents proud. Then they are given a new restaurant and a new menu, giving them a renewed push. Now they are determined to win and make the restaurant a success, leading them into Act 3 and the climax. And once again, this is Toy Story. The protagonist, Woody, tries to establish power against changes, resulting in Buzz being kicked out of the window. We get more confrontation as Andy takes Woody, Buzz chases after them, and they are left behind at a petrol station. Now it could be argued that this is actually still part of Act 1 and this is a sudden change to the world, but either way works. Next, we get the fun and games, and Buzz and Woody go against different obstacles during their pursuit to get back to Andy. This is the promise of the premise. Can two toys that don't like each other work together to maneuver through the scary real world? The obstacles get harder and harder before finally they are captured by Sid, the demonic neighbour child. Then, the midpoint. Woody realises the danger they're in and how his jealousy and controlling nature is to blame. Plus, Buzz's midpoint. He realises he is in fact a toy and suddenly has a better understanding of Woody. Then, we up the stakes. Buzz and Woody are trapped. His friends think he killed Buzz and he knows that Sid will very soon try to blow them up. This gives Woody a renewed push and determination to escape, leading them into Act 3 and the climax. Okay, back to Ramsay. The protagonists, also known as the owners, work together to run a successful relaunch of their restaurant. It's all coming together and looks like they'll succeed, but then suddenly there's a twist. Something goes wrong and it feels like all is lost. In Kitchen Nightmares, this is usually something like the kitchen is overwhelmed or a waiter quits. But the owners push through, defeat the overwhelming dinner service and are victorious. A new normal has been established. And guess what? That's just fucking Toy Story. The protagonists work together to defeat Sid. It's all coming together and it looks like they'll succeed in getting home. But then suddenly, there's a twist. They've missed the moving van and it looks like all is lost. However, Woody and Buzz push through, make it to the moving van and now find themselves as friends. A new normal has been established. And you might be thinking that following this structure constantly would lead to very boring films and shows. And yeah, 100% you're right. This isn't a rule that must be followed at all times. However, I do think it's important to have an understanding of it. You can't break a formula or expectations without knowing what those formulas or expectations are. And story structure is ingrained in us, even if you haven't studied film or writing. From the first time you watched a Disney film or read the words Once Upon a Time, story structure was there. People know it, even if they aren't aware of it. So you need to at least know what audiences are used to. Okay, we've done structure, let's talk character. Character wants and needs are a bit of an asshole, mainly because every writer seems to have a slightly different take on what it means and how they should be used. So this is a very basic way I describe it, and if you disagree, don't. Life's too short. A character's want is usually the goal they're striving to achieve. The detective wants to solve the cold case, or the boy wants to get the girl. The want is what should propel the plot forward. It's the reason the story is happening in the first place. And the want is usually connected to some kind of character flaw. The detective thinks he's the only one who can solve the case. He's closed off, a loner, refuses help. And the boy thinks of himself as lesser. If this girl doesn't love him, then no one else ever will. Both of these are flawed worldviews and make them interesting characters. The need is less simple and obvious. The detective doesn't need to solve the cold case. He instead needs to learn to let go and accept that he needs help. The boy doesn't need to get the girl, he instead needs to learn to be happy in himself and find someone who loves him for who he is. Need is usually connected to either the protagonist's past or deepest fear or something they've always believed that isn't true. The detective has worked his whole life and is scared of retiring and feeling like he failed, and the boy has been bullied and now thinks he's really ugly. So to go back to Toy Story, Woody wants to be Andy's favourite toy and to be seen as the leader of the group. His want is driven by the flaw that he thinks one day Andy will just stop caring about him. However, what Woody needs is to learn to accept change, to be more open and friendly and face his fears that he's not good enough. The issue is, again, a lot of good scripts will hide these moments so they don't feel as obvious or formulaic, meaning that a lot of writers struggle to understand and see what wants and needs mean in practice. Kitchen Nightmares, however, is a reality show and it is as subtle as a hammer on your head, so use it. The want in every Kitchen Nightmares is basically the same. The owner wants to run a successful restaurant, or they want their restaurant to be as busy like it was when they first opened. The want is so obvious and it propels the plot forward. It's literally why they're on the show. The need changes a little bit each episode, however due to it being reality TV, it literally tells you outright what they need to do or learn in order to become better people. Sometimes the owner needs to learn to let go, to give the restaurant over to their children and retire, or they need to learn that they're the reason the business is failing and they need to change their ways. Sometimes it's a little different again. The owner wants to be liked by everyone, to be seen as everyone's friend. However, if they want their business to work, they need to start acting like a boss and fire the awful chef, or waiter, or barman. And once you've watched a few of them, you'll start shouting what the person needs at the telly. Time and time again, there's a spouse who wants their partner to step away from the business and be a loving husband, but actually what they need to do is accept that the marriage isn't good and they should leave and move on. And this is where you can learn emotion too. As you're watching, ask yourself, do you like these owners? Do you want them to succeed in either their business or marriage or whatever? And then ask yourself why. What is it about these people's wants and needs that resonate with you and why not others? Understanding what makes you personally connect with people will help you when writing characters you want your audience to feel for. It will help you create interesting protagonists and antagonists who are as flawed as they are likeable or interesting. Also, you get some variations of this. There are many negative character arcs within the show. Sometimes an owner just wants what they want, refusing to give up their goal for what they actually need, usually leading to the business failing and closing down. It's all there, on YouTube for free. Honestly, watch a few episodes and you'll start seeing all the tropes of storytelling. Before we move on to our next lesson, here's a few things you shouldn't take away from the angry blonde British man. Please do not learn anything about exposition from this show. Like I've said, this is reality TV. Reality TV is designed in a way that the audience doesn't have to think or work too hard when watching it. The show just tells you everything. They don't try and subtly convey a marriage is falling apart, instead they just say, I hate my husband, I want to kill him. There is no lesson to be learned about exposition or interesting unique dialogue here at all. Also, although I've called this the Gordon Ramsay method, please ignore Gordon at all costs. You won't learn anything interesting about plot, structure or character from him. He's not flawed in the show makes him look correct at every turn because he's the host and the executive producer. He's the thing that everyone should strive to be, that's what they want you to think. And lastly, remember that this is a silly method to help you understand and navigate the basics. I am not saying you should write a script based on Kitchen Nightmares or that you should follow the Kitchen Nightmares structure completely. That'd be fucking ridiculous. I just think it's a fun way to learn some of the techniques. I will not be held responsible for your agent dropping you because you handed in a script that reads like a 2010 cooking show. Okay. I love talking about tone when it comes to writing. I'll do a whole video on tone one day because not only is it interesting, but it's also super important. The tone of a show or a film can make or break it almost immediately, and it also dictates to the audience that you want to attract. For example, Kitchen Nightmares USA is unapologetically trashy reality TV. It's edited within an inch of its life. Lots of close-up, quick cuts, the music, the fucking music. It's constant. Every argument is underscored like it's the final scene of an action movie. The whole thing is incredibly loud. It sounds like the mic is as close as it could possibly be during the shouting matches. It's full on. Kitchen Nightmares UK is a very different show. Even though it follows the exact same formula, it feels completely opposite to the heavily edited USA version. The UK one is slower, more subtle. It has the feeling of a fly-on-the-wall documentary rather than a US reality show. The music is barely used, the editing is much simpler. Lots of just one-shot scenes, the arguments feel less showy. Its tone is completely different because it's for a different audience. And although all this might sound more of a directing thing, you can still use it when it comes to writing. Who's your intended audience? What tone would they be expecting? How does the tone affect your dialogue or plot beats? Seeing two versions of basically the same show played out so differently can really help show you just how important it all is. Now you may be watching this video and thinking it's all obvious, and if so, good for you fucking show off, but sometimes it's hard to understand a technique without seeing it laid out so basically. I use this method a lot when working with writers because it takes away the pressure of feeling academic. It may feel a little bit dumb or tongue-in-cheek, and that's kind of because it is, and I think that's why it works. I also like it because it takes away all the wankiness. I don't think writing is about being academic. I don't care if you were an A grade student or an F grade, if you struggle with spelling. I couldn't give a shit if you learnt to write from reading Aristotle or watching crappy TV. A good story is a good story. And at least this way, you get to watch Kitchen Nightmares.